SB19 lands in New York, Latin America and Indonesia's online news. National Online News, NV Media from New York, Zhao Pap from Latin America, Bandwagon and Creative Disc from Indonesia.
No press release signaled this shift. No coordinated campaign explains the timing. But in recent months, a recalibration has occurred in how global media architecture processes Filipino music. SB19 has arrived simultaneously in 3 markets that rarely synchronize their attention: New York's media establishment, Latin America's viral amplification engines, and Indonesia's digital fandom infrastructure. This wasn't orchestrated hype. It was independent verification across continents. The significance lies not in the coverage itself, but in what prompted it. Media outlets in these regions don't move in tandem without a catalyst. Something triggered recognition in newsrooms from Manhattan to Jakarta, and that something reveals a fundamental evolution in SB19's positioning. We need to examine what actually happened, because the mechanics of this breakthrough differ entirely from typical viral ascent. First, consider the New York factor. Breaking into this ecosystem matters because it doesn't respond to trending metrics alone. Editorial desks at global music publications receive hundreds of pitches daily about rising acts from every continent. They filter ruthlessly. For SB19 to penetrate this noise, the signal had to be undeniable. It arrived through chart data, specifically Visa registering on international tracking systems that New York analysts monitor for early indicators. But numbers alone don't generate features. The song's narrative, addressing Filipino struggles for global mobility, provided the human angle that makes international stories travel. New York validated not just the metrics, but the message. This distinction is critical. Fan campaigns can push songs into chart positions. We've seen it before. But editorial gatekeepers distinguish between manipulated momentum and organic traction. They detected the latter. When multiple publications began referencing SB19 within the same news cycle, it indicated independent editorial judgment, not a press release blast. That's the difference between being mentioned and being recognized. One is placement, the other is credibility. The Latin American development follows different logic. This region operates on cultural chemistry, not institutional validation. Music spreads through dance challenges, remix culture, and artist-to-artist cosigns. SB19's entry into this space signals that their sonic architecture, blending pop, hip-hop, EDM, and Filipino storytelling, contains the fluidity Latin audiences demand. The region doesn't adopt music casually. It absorbs, transforms, and retransmits. Once that process begins, it becomes self-sustaining. Industry observers note that Latin American digital platforms began surfacing SB19 content organically, without label-driven seeding. This suggests the music's structural compatibility, rhythmic complexity that invites choreography, bilingual elements that lower entry barriers, and emotional narratives that translate across Spanish and Portuguese-speaking markets. The executive class in Miami and Sao Paulo watches these signals closely. When they see organic pickup, they start calculating touring feasibility and collaboration potential. That calculus has already begun. Indonesia presents a third, equally complex scenario. Here, the story is digital infrastructure meeting fandom velocity. Indonesian online communities don't just consume, they construct trending ecosystems. Their engagement patterns create data surges that platforms like YouTube and Spotify's algorithms interpret as global signals. SB19's existing Southeast Asian footprint, built through multilingual releases and regional collaborations, position them perfectly for this acceleration. The crucial detail: Indonesian media coverage preceded the current wave. Local digital outlets were already tracking SB19's regional moves. When the New York and Latin American signals arrived, Indonesian platforms amplified simultaneously, creating a triangular data pattern that algorithms elevated. This wasn't coincidence. It was convergence. And convergence at this scale doesn't happen without underlying readiness. What makes this moment fundamentally different from SB19's previous international mentions? The shift from fan-initiated to media-validated recognition. Before, global visibility resulted from audience coordinated streaming, tweeting, and translating. Impressive, but self-generated. Now, editorial teams in 3 distinct media cultures independently determined SB19 warranted coverage. That changes the narrative architecture. When media drives discovery, several mechanisms activate that fan efforts cannot replicate. Algorithms on platforms like Google News and Spotify's editorial playlists prioritize media mentions as signals of broader relevance. Industry talent scouts use media aggregation tools to track which artists are crossing regional thresholds. Booking agents correlate media spikes with routing opportunities. Each piece of coverage becomes a force multiplier, not an isolated event. This is where the conversation moves from visibility to viability. SB19's team has understood something crucial. Sustainable global expansion requires media infrastructure, not just social momentum. Their strategy reflects this comprehension. Begin with their foundational positioning. Since inception, SB19 articulated a world-stage ambition that many Filipino acts claim, but few architecturally pursue. Their interviews consistently returned to one theme: representing Philippines beyond its borders. That narrative consistency matters because international media searches for artists with coherent identity stories. SB19 provided one. Second, their music operates on dual tracks. Visa exemplifies this, commercially accessible while thematically specific. It doesn't obscure its Filipino perspective to chase universality. It leverages specificity as differentiation. Western executives often advise artists to neutralize their origins for global appeal. SB19 rejected this, and the data proved the instinct correct. Struggle narratives around mobility, aspiration, and identity barriers resonate globally because they reflect universal experiences through particular cultural lenses. Third, their performance strategy demonstrates systematic thinking. Securing a slot at Lollapalooza, making history as the first Filipino act to perform there, wasn't a prestige play. It was a data point. International festival circuits function as living portfolios for talent buyers worldwide. A successful Lollapalooza set becomes reference material in conversations about Coachella, Primavera Sound, and Glastonbury. Each performance reduces perceived risk for future bookers. The domino effects from this triangular media recognition will unfold predictably, though not immediately. First, expect intensified industry approaches. The conversations happening now, in Los Angeles management offices, Seoul entertainment conglomerates, London booking agencies, won't surface publicly for months. They involve touring infrastructure questions, venue capacity targets, sponsorship alignments, promotional partnership structures. SB19's team is already having these discussions. The media coverage provides leverage. Second, chart performance will accelerate. Not because of direct correlation, but because media coverage triggers playlist inclusion, which triggers streaming in new markets, which triggers chart eligibility. Visa will likely see delayed chart resurgence in Billboard's global excl, US, and possibly UK singles. The mechanics are already in motion. Third, collaboration dynamics shift. When Latin artists and Western producers see SB19 in their regional media, they perceive reduced collaboration risk. The question moves from, will this work, to when can we schedule? SB19's existing collaboration, emoji, becomes proof of concept rather than experiment. Future features will carry strategic market entry calculations, not just artistic curiosity. The broader implications extend beyond SB19. Filipino artists have historically faced a structural barrier: exceptional talent without scalable infrastructure. Global distribution networks, promotional capital, and industry relationships concentrated in Seoul, Los Angeles, and London. Breaking through required either signing to those systems or building parallel ones. SB19 appears to be constructing a third path, maintaining creative sovereignty while achieving media legitimacy. This creates a template. Future P-pop acts can reference SB19's model. Develop regional fan infrastructure, release thematically specific but sonically accessible music, secure festival slots that function as industry additions, and allow media recognition to follow organic signals rather than forcing it. The blueprint is visible, but acknowledging this moment requires honesty about its rarity. Simultaneous media penetration across New York, Latin America, and Indonesia is statistically improbable. Most artists spend years cracking one market. SB19's convergence suggests either extraordinary coordination, which the evidence contradicts, or underlying quality that multiple systems recognized independently. The latter is more compelling and more significant. Industry veterans understand this truth. When something is real, it moves without noise. The most important career expansions happen in conversations that never trend. They occur in A&R meetings where an executive says, "I saw that name in 3 different regional reports this month." They happen when festival programmers receive unsolicited texts from colleagues in other markets asking, "Have you heard these guys?" They manifest as softened resistance in risk-averse industries. SB19's current moment embodies this principle. The coverage itself is visible, but the mechanisms that generated it, editorial meetings, algorithmic thresholds, industry chatter, remain invisible. That's how recognition hardens into establishment. Years from now, when analysts dissect P-pop's global emergence, this period will serve as a case study in media-driven breakthrough. Not because SB19 manufactured it, but because they built something undeniable that media systems couldn't ignore. The triangle of validation, institutional, cultural, digital, created a self-reinforcing cycle. The question isn't whether SB19 will capitalize. Their team has demonstrated too much strategic patience for that doubt. The question is how quickly the industry will adjust its infrastructure to accommodate them. Tour routing will need to include Southeast Asian markets previously considered secondary. Collaboration pipelines will need to account for Tagalog English-Spanish multilingual releases. Media systems will need to track P-pop as a category, not a curiosity. This is what threshold moments look like. Not dramatic announcements, but recalibrated assumptions. The global music industry just recalibrated for SB19. The effects will appear gradually, then suddenly. History often looks quiet while it's happening. This is that quiet.